Welcome to Asia Outlook. I'm Melody and I'm here to report the top stories from around Asia. Wearable technology has so far been limited to smartwatches and fitness trackers. But now a team of scientists in Singapore has added smart clothing to that list. They developed a material that can be used to boost signals between devices and potentially assist in monitoring health vital signs. CGTN Mira Liu reports.
In a short span of time, smart tech has dominated our lives. Currently, most smart devices connect via radio waves like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. These waves travel outwards in all directions before returning to the wearable tech on your body, such as smart watches and fitness trackers. Researchers at the National University of Singapore have invented a type of smart textile that can make communication between your devices 1,000 times faster, bringing wearable devices to the next level.
And so what we've done was design a very special pattern that can actually kind of capture these signals, and rather than to have these signals move out away from you, they can kind of glide on the surface of your body.
The technology also allows users to save on that precious battery and protect their devices from hackers.
Most of your devices spend actually the majority of its battery life just transmitting these wireless signals. So that could translate to much more energy efficient communication. The second would be maybe security. It means that anyone kind of standing around you can't listen in on that signal.
The smart clothing consists of this comb-shaped stripe, which is highly durable and can be attached to any type of clothing. A probable use of this technology can be in athletics. This smart fabric could potentially be converted into specialized clothing for athletes to measure their performance regularly and continuously. Another significant application for smart clothing in the future is, of course, in healthcare. Right now, doctors will have to connect patients through multiple wires to heavy medical equipment for vitals monitoring, such as heart rate and blood pressure. But in the future, they might be able to just tape this smart textile on hospital gowns, perhaps, to reduce the dependency on bulky items.
And so what kind of these wearable devices allow you to do is kind of capture for the first time how your body changes dynamically over a period of hours, days, maybe even weeks. And so that kind of information could maybe just give me something fundamentally different than what an invasive test could do. Maybe in some contexts, hopefully even replace what an invasive test could do.
Thanks to its wearability, smart clothing can especially help monitor people with respiratory disease and heart conditions while they go about their regular lives. The development of smart clothing is still in its early stages across the globe, but there is no denying that with every new invention, we're moving closer to a day when smart clothes become a part of our daily lives. Mirulu, CGTN, Singapore.
Yasuhiro Nakasone, one of Japan's longest-serving prime ministers, has died at the age of 101. Nakasone served as prime minister from 1982 to 1987. During his tenure, he said Japan's behavior in World War II was wrong and said modern politicians should learn lessons and take the country on a correct course. In response to his death, the Chinese Foreign Ministry said Nakasone was a visionary politician and made a great contribution to promoting relations with China. Thai children are walking on a zebra crossing and look as if they're floating on white blocks suspended in midair, but it is just an optical illusion. Let's take a look. The UN says a special committee which is trying to amend Syria's constitution in the midst of a bloody civil war failed to reach an agreement over a common agenda. A special envoy for Syria said a second round of talks this week were inconclusive, but expressed hope for the future of the dialogue. The Constitutional Committee was established earlier this year, but didn't have its first round of talks until this month. Asia is a primary source and victim of plastic pollution. Every year, about 8 million tons of discarded plastic ends up in the ocean. It is estimated the amount of plastic in oceans will outweigh fish by 2050 if adequate measures are not taken. In Indonesia, a major fishing port is covered in plastic. Pollution is a real concern for people living there. Tony Cheng has more from Indonesia.
On the polluted beaches of Muncar in Indonesia, goats and chickens rummage through the waste, scavenging for whatever they can find. It's hardly surprising they eat a lot of what's most plentiful, plastic, washed up on the tide.
When we butcher the goats, we find plastic in their stomachs.
The pollution is a real concern for Dr. Firdaus. He's the senior physician at the local hospital. Since the pollution hit several years ago, he's seen a dramatic rise in stomach complaints. Some minor, but if untreated, infections that can be deadly.
In Muncar, the most common health issues related to the pollution are diarrhea, gastrointestinal problems and gastric infections. These are the most common symptoms.
Muncar is famous as a fishing port. It's one of the largest in Indonesia, and the fish caught in the polluted waters here are shipped around the world. It might be tempting to look at these fish caught in these plastic-infested waters and think, well, that's sad for the people of this small Indonesian town, but what's that got to do with me? But these fish are often sent out to canning factories and frozen exporters who are then sending them off to Japan, to Europe and the United States. With so much plastic pollution in our environment, researchers at the world-renowned Medical University of Vienna set out to discover how much is getting into us. They did it by testing human excrement from 8 countries around the world, and the results were emphatic.
In all samples which we took, 8 out of 8, they were positively tested for the presence of microplastic.
Disturbingly, we don't know what it's doing once it's inside us, even though plastics often contain chemicals that can cause cancer or disrupt our hormones.
We have certain papers which report impact on sea animals, on fish, but this is not only the microplastic itself, it could also be that the chemicals which leach out of these plastic particles, they cause harm and disrupt, for instance, the endocrine system. If the same is true for humans, this needs to be determined by future trials.
There's now no question that plastic is finding its way through the food chain and into our own bodies. The big question is what it's doing when it gets there, and at this stage, there's no simple answer. Tony Cheng, CGTN.
Chinese President Xi Jinping held talks in Beijing with visited Russian Security Council Secretary Nikolai Patrushev on Monday. During their meeting, Xi said China and Russia need to stand by each other as reliable strategic partners. Xi said this comes after both countries are faced with interference by the United States and other Western countries in domestic affairs. He adds that such actions threaten the country's sovereignty and security. For his part, Patrushev said Russia and China should continue working together to safeguard multilateralism and peace for international relations. Patrushev was in Beijing to attend a series of security meetings. This is Asia Outlook broadcasting from Myanmar International Radio. You can visit our website at miradio.com.mm. You can also listen to our radio programs live on the website. Public outrage is growing in India over the gang rape and murder of a 27-year-old vet in the city of Hyderabad. Protesters have taken to the streets demanding justice, with some calling for the death penalty for the criminals. Rape and violence against women remains at high levels across India, despite widespread public anger at high-profile cases. The victim's charred remains were discovered after she disappeared on Wednesday. She was allegedly gang raped by 4 men who later murdered her and set her body on fire. Several European ambassadors condemned the Democratic People's Republic of Korea for its continued ballistic missile testings. The joint statement came from Belgium, Estonia, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, and Poland. Let's listen to the statement read by Polish Ambassador Joanna Ronecka.
The DPKR has conducted 13 sets of ballistic missile launches since May and continued to operate its nuclear program. We condemn these provocative actions. They undermine regional security and stability, as well as international peace and security, and are in clear violation of unanimously adopted UN Security Council resolutions. We also condemn the recent threats made by DPKR to partners in the region and beyond. We continue to urge the DPKR to engage in good faith in meaningful negotiations with the United States aimed at denuclearization and to take concrete steps to abandoning all weapons of mass destruction and ballistic missile programs in a complete, verifiable and irreversible manner.
As the world's governments meet in Madrid to discuss the global challenge of climate change, thousands of kilometers away, people in Cambodia are grappling with dramatic changes to the country's ecosystem, including the lowest water levels in the important Mekong River ever recorded. A severely low fish harvest this year could cause a major food crisis in the country. Dustia Salko has more.
Talk to any fisherman here and you will hear similar stories. Stories of the past go like this. There was so much fish in this lake, they would jump into our boat. Or our families could survive on fishing alone. The stories we hear these days paint a different picture. One of hardship, of desperation, of depletion. Gone are the good old days. A trifecta of economic development, illegal fishing and climate change is changing the ecology of the lake, permanently weakening the pole system and wiping out fish stocks. Like a beating heart, Tonle Sap operates on a flood pole system. Its eponymous river is pushed towards the Mekong. During rainy season, when monsoons swell the Mekong, it pushes water back into Tonle Sap River and back into the lake, expanding to 5 times its dry season size, bringing with it massive amounts of sediment and rich abundance of fish. Well, that is usually the case. No country in the world relies on their lakes to the extent Cambodia does. Some 500,000 tons of fish which are caught each year feed the nation, providing the main source of protein for as much as 80% of the population. They feed Cambodia's neighbors, who import thousands of tons each year as part of a $2 billion industry. The life of the lower Mekong Basin comes out of Tonle Sap Lake, the source of 18% of the planet's freshwater fish catch.
Not safety for food security for this year, especially Cambodian people, and for export to another country too. If they don't have enough for this, next 5 years or 10 years will be no more fish product, and the livelihood will be affected to the people.
Heading into an irreversible decline, droughts are increasing, water resources are decreasing. The rich abundance of fisheries and biodiversity threatened. And so too will the livelihoods and food security of millions who have depended on this lake and the Mekong for generations. As the sun sets, Mai Prun goes out to check his nets. His catch translates into stark realities. Tonle Sap is in trouble. Its people are in trouble. Along these banks, the Khmer civilization sprang, its ecosystem now facing a real threat of total collapse. Lusita Saokao, CGTN, Kampong Chhnang, Cambodia.
South Korean President Moon Jae-in said the global diplomatic push to defuse the nuclear standoff with DPRK is set at a critical crossroad. It calls for China to continue its support for the denuclearization process and restoration of peace at the Korean Peninsula. Moon made the comments while doing a meeting with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi in Seoul on Thursday. Wang also talked about Moon's upcoming visit to China. Earlier, CGTN correspondent Joseph Kim gave us more details on Wang Yi's visit.
This follows a meeting that he held with his South Korean counterpart, Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa, on Wednesday. Now, during that meeting, we heard from officials here reveal that a number of things were discussed, including preparations for the envisioned trilateral summit in China with Japan that Moon Jae-in is planning on attending, as well as security issues involving the DPRK and the United States. It was also revealed that the two ministers agreed that the countries would hold their first gathering of their planned joint vice ministerial panel on people-to-people exchanges in the near future. And lastly, perhaps and most importantly, Seoul officials here have said that through the meeting between Kang Kyung-hwa and Wang Yi, that the two countries have agreed to expand exchanges to try to completely normalize relations.
The death toll from Typhoon Kamuri, the 20th to hit the country this year, has risen to 11. Since making landfall on Monday, the storm has brought a downpour and strong winds in the provinces of Luzon and Samar. It has since weakened into a severe tropical storm, but schools and businesses have been closed in hundreds of towns and cities. Nearly 500,000 people have been affected. The China Islamic Association on Wednesday expressed strong indignation and firm opposition to the passage of a Xinjiang-related bill by the U.S. House of Representatives.
It's a deeply divided Capitol Hill, it seems, on all issues except China. The vote 407-1, and the bill is a stronger version than what the U.S. Senate passed on Xinjiang a few months ago.
We are sending a message to Beijing. America is watching, and we will not stand silent.
However, this statement didn't go down too well on the other side of the world.
It is smearing and slandering China's successful ethnic policy, in particular its Xinjiang policy, in an attempt to poison ethnic relations, undermine Xinjiang's prosperity and stability, and contain China's development.
Beijing went as far as to summon the acting deputy chief of the U.S. Embassy in Beijing over the bill. Meanwhile, multiple government bodies, including the country's top legislature, have issued strong words of condemnation. Xinjiang's local political advisory body said a large number of people and hundreds of police officers have been killed in thousands of terror attacks since the 1990s. Yet it said the U.S. fails to respect this fact and the lives of the people of Xinjiang. China has also slammed America's own human rights records.
The U.S. also conducts forced assimilation of Native Americans, killing, expelling, and persecuting them and denying them their due civil rights. Today, they only account for 2.09% of the total U.S. population. They are facing numerous difficulties.
The Chinese Foreign Ministry also commented on Pelosi's statement about China's Xinjiang measures being, and quote, outrage to the collective conscience of the world.
In recent years, the U.S. used human rights and counterterrorism as a cover to wage wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria, killing millions of innocent civilians and turning more into displaced refugees. Such acts, in total contempt of people's right to life and development, are a real outrage to the collective conscience of the world.
Jing Chao, CGTN.
This is Asia Outlook broadcasting live from Myanmar International Radio. On FM, make sure you catch us on 96.1 FM in Yangon, 96.5 in Mandalay, and 96.7 in Naypyidaw. You can also download MI Radio app on both iOS and Android devices for your own convenience. There's been an explosion near the presidential palace in the center of Indonesia's capital city. People said at least 2 soldiers stationed near Jakarta's National Monument Park were injured. They've been taken to an army hospital, one with injuries to his hand, the other to his leg. The blast is believed to have been caused by a smoke grenade, and an investigation is now underway. Cookbook is an exhibition in Beijing that pushes the limits, dividing the kitchen and the studio, blurring the line between food and art. It is an experimental playground for chefs and artists. CGTN Lane Lin has more.
Try guessing which one of these are the works of a chef. This, or this. Andrea Petrini says you're not supposed to know.
If you could identify, that one is an artist, meaning that one is a real artist, that one is not, meaning is a chef, it would be a failure. It would be a failure. I don't want to have chefs playing, hey, I'm the big chef and the artist is here, I'm much better, I'm a real artist. I want to have them working with the same open-mindedness and having different results.
Cookbook is an experimental playground for artists and chefs. Take this piece of installation, for example. Chef Rene Redzepi illuminates the invisible. He collected handprints from his restaurant staff, incubated them so visitors get a magnified look at the invisible germs on the petri dish. This dried octopus makes up the centerpiece of Chef Thomas Frebel's artwork. Octopus is also one of the key ingredients on his menu. Though it may be debatable, Frebel wants to suggest through his creative piece that food can potentially be art. Wang Yunhao adds a Chinese flavor to the exhibition with his selection of artworks from Chinese chefs.
In bringing cookbooks to China, we didn't want to copy and paste what has already been done in its overseas edition. We want to work together with chefs in China and use different forms of art to present their culinary philosophies, coming up with artworks that are personal and unique.
Yang Jing is taking part in this kind of event for the first time, and he's presented his signature dish, gold medal pork.
There's a lot for us to learn in terms of art and creativity. As for my artwork, I've chosen my medal-winning dish. My career achievement, my life, and my award-winning restaurant are all tied to it. It defines who I am.
Food has always been an important subject matter in art throughout history, but whether chefs are also artists has been a recurring question over the years. Regardless of the answer, chefs in Cookbook push at the limits dividing the kitchen and the studio, taking us on an adventure into the world of food and art. Lin Lin, CGTN.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said NATO allies should support Turkey in its fight against Syrian Kurdish fighters. The comments come after Ankara dropped its objections to NATO's defense plan for the Baltics and Poland. Erdogan said he changed his mind after NATO Secretary General and other world leaders asked for Turkey's support. He also urged allies to provide funds for Turkey's plan to set a safe zone in northeastern Syria. Relations between Turkey and its NATO allies have soured after a host of issues, ranging from Ankara's decision to procure Russia air defense systems to Syria policy. The gigantic size and armor-like skin make rhinoceros seem to come from the distant dinosaur age. Rhinos once roamed across Asia because they favor the warm and humid climate. Among 5 rhino species in the world, 3 are distributed in Asia. The wild ones are now mainly found in just 4 countries: India, Nepal, Bhutan, and Indonesia. In November, the death of the last Sumatran rhino in Malaysia declared the extinction of the species in the country, arousing people's attention on the fate of Sumatran rhino and its 2 cousins in Asia. China prepares for the 2020 Beijing Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games, people are learning about taking part in winter sports. In the capital city of Beijing, ice hockey is becoming increasingly popular among children and teenagers.
I've played hockey for 7 years.
One day at a shopping park, I saw some people playing ice hockey and I wanted to join them.
These children followed their hearts and started to play ice hockey. They train and play after school. There are now more than 4,500 young hockey players on record in Beijing. Average training is 2 to 3 evenings per week with games on the weekends. The children are also expected to keep up with their schoolwork, but they are happy.
Time is a bit tight, but it's okay. I'm used to it.
In 2016, the Beijing government released a 7-year plan to develop winter sports, and ice hockey is one of the targeted sports. There are now 32 youth hockey clubs and 3 youth leagues. Games are played from November to June. Players from 6 to 18 years old can take part by joining clubs or in school teams.
From my perspective, the passion for ice hockey is very high. For a long time, there wasn't much participation. Now as it develops, enthusiasm among parents and children is growing each year.
Relatively speaking, for China, I think Beijing's education system is good in terms of balancing sports and studies. Beijing's children are lucky because the city is better than elsewhere in leagues and resources, such as coaches.
Ice hockey is more expensive than many other sports and hobbies, but most parents are happy to spend on their children's development. And it can mean more than just a hobby. Some have big dreams.
I hope I'll be able to play in the NHL and make my country proud of me.
I want to play for the national hockey team and the national youth team. In the future, maybe play in North America.
With 3 years to go before the 2022 Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games, ice hockey's prospects in Beijing seem very positive. Greg Lafredi, CGTN.
From fluffy short-legged horses to cute cats and dogs, vivacious parrots to shy hedgehogs and other kinds of lovely pets, South China's Kunming City is currently the place for animal lovers as pet owners gather for the 4th China Kunming ASEAN Pet Expo.
就是像宠物店现在有很多的设备，就是或者是说这个宠物医院需求的设备，那在现场都能找得到。然后还有一些就是目前的一些新式的狗粮，大家需要了解这个最新的市场，然后都能找得到。
And that's all we have for today's Asia Outlook on MI Radio. Thank you for being with us. I'm Melody. We'll be back next week. Until next time.